Aloha, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for your patience in the delay of this broadcast. My name is Athena Moberg, and I am your host of this live event, which is the Narcissistic Abuse Virtual Summit, Surviving Narcissistic Abuse. So if you've tuned in live for this broadcast and you are realizing that we are now 36 minutes behind schedule, we have had some technical difficulties with the software, and we do sincerely apologize. And this is a live Q&A interactive broadcast, so if you would like to tweet us your questions, you may go to twitter.com and go up to the search area and type in the hashtag NarcAbuseChat. Send us your questions. We'll do our best to answer them. It may not be able to be answered live during this broadcast, but we will be going back and referring and responding to everyone's questions on facebook.com/NarcDiaries. Now, I did receive, we had a widget on our website that allowed you to ask anonymous questions. I thought we would just get a few. We would open it up for a live Q&A, but what happened was we got flooded with over 50 questions just in the past few days. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our very special guest and let you know who else is going to be on this broadcast. So as I said, I'm your host, Athena Moberg, and my amazing co-host, Bobby Parrish, is also in the green room along with Bree Von Shea. And as you know, if you've been watching this channel for any time, Bobby and I do these Google Hangouts every single week for trauma survivors. And we actually met Bree Von Shea virtually and have collaborated on this narcissistic abuse event. You can find Bree by going to facebook.com/narcopath. And Bree will go ahead and be answering some questions, as will Bobby. This is a 4-hour event, and it will be going 4 hours total. So we will be, it'll end 30 minutes later than it should have. So again, our apologies for the late start. I do want to introduce to you our very special guest, Richard Grannon, the Spartan Life Coach. And it is quite late in the UK, so I'm going to read you Richard's bio briefly. If you are not familiar with his work, I highly suggest going to YouTube and subscribing to his channel. And you can also find him on Facebook and Twitter, only I don't know if he tweets very much, but he is on Facebook, and YouTube is his jam. He's always putting out YouTube videos, and he's amazing. So subscribe to the Spartan Life Coach channel. And I'm going to read you his bio briefly. Richard Grannon is the Spartan Life Coach. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology from Aston University at age 21 and qualified as a master practitioner of NLP the following year, having trained with Richard Bandler. He draws on elements of neuro-linguistic programming, cognitive behavioral therapy, Zen meditation, hypnotherapy, systems thinking, classical psychiatry, and psychodynamics and Stoic philosophy to give you the most direct and practical solutions you need to know. He has been working as a coach and a psychology trainer for over 10 years. He works within the British education system as a motivational speaker and on applied psychology and developing programs for children and teachers with various objectives. He also developed a globally recognized brand with his company StreetFightSecrets.com. If you haven't gone there, go check that out after the event, which combines simplified applied psychology with self-protection concepts. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Richard here on to say hello to everyone and just share a little bit about maybe his YouTube channel, just give us a little rundown on what you're up to lately, and then we'll dive into some content and some Q&A. Hi, Richard.
Hi. The YouTube channel was a project that developed out of the Street Fight Secrets. Well, it started with Street Fight Secrets. Then I wanted to teach people self-assertiveness skills and focus more on psychology. And so I started the Spartan Life Coach channel. And then that has sort of gone down the road of looking at how people have people pleaser syndrome or codependency, broken ego boundaries, and how that can be caused by narcissistic or emotional abuse. And that's kind of where the channel is up to now. It's got a major focus on complex PTSD and narcissistic abuse.
Wonderful. Well, we really appreciate you agreeing to be our special guest today. And I was wondering if perhaps you wanted to answer a couple of the questions I know, like I was saying a little bit earlier, I thought we would get a couple of questions in anonymously and that we'd be able to address some of those and have you personally answer the questions of the
Sure.
people that wrote in. We received a flood of questions from over 50 people,
Okay.
and most of them give a description of the abuse they incurred by their narcissist, followed up with usually the question of, will I ever be normal again? Will I ever, ever, ever recover from the abuse that I incurred in this narcissistic relationship? I was raised by narcissistic parents, and I was brainwashed and gaslighted my entire life. I had a false sense of reality. It was all a fairy tale. My entire life is a farce. I was married to 3 different narcissists, and all of them were just like my father. I mean, just on and on and on and on and on. And the question that everybody needs answered is, can they ever recover? Will they ever not only be normal again, but will they ever feel normal again? Will they ever feel whole? And if so, how?
If by normal they mean the average or mean or median of the typical person in society, then no, they won't be normal again in that respect. Simply because the most optimistic outlook for a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and it is optimistic because many people just go down, the damage that is done to the internal system can be so severe that either they will take a quick way out directly via suicide, or they will slowly just crush their lives down to a very primal state where they're no longer really living, they're just surviving, like the Walking Dead. They're in a very, very numb state. The damage that this can cause can be very, very severe indeed. However, I am ever hopeful and optimistic because I recovered from narcissistic abuse. I recovered from very seriously abusive scenarios in my life, different ones that I seem to have ended up in. And I wouldn't say I feel normal, but I feel sovereign, meaning I feel like I am my own person. And so you can either go down, if you go down that path into the destruction that is the ultimate goal of the narcissist, or you can defiantly refuse to go down and instead go up. And if you, this is a long, hard battle, extremely tough. It's trial by fire, real, hardline spiritual initiation stuff. If you survive that and you can get through it, you will be better than the average person. You will be better than normal. You will be more aware, more focused, more boundaried, more decisive, more objective, with a better self-awareness, more awareness of human psychology, a stronger philosophy, and simply a greater clarity of thought and a better sense of humor awaits you.
Thanks for giving us some hope. A lot of the viewers of this channel, most of, if not all, of our subscribers are adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse, which happened at the hands of a narcissistic parent or an absentee parent, abusive parent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then have gone on to be in relationships with abusive people. So how is it that they, in your opinion, can avoid falling back into these abusive relationships that seem to repeat their childhood?
Well, that's a big question. So let me give you the answer right now inside of 4 minutes. No, it's very, very difficult. I am a survivor, if you like, of similar circumstances as a child. The parent who is involved in that abuse is now in jail for it for a long time, for what he did, not just to me, but others of his children. That was part of his second family. The wounds that create. The problem with this kind of wounding is it's different to normal wounds. I taught self-protection for a long time, I still teach self-protection. So I would deal with the victims of violent crime very, very frequently. And if you're a boundaried adult and you're attacked, beaten up, hurt, whatever it is, your sense of self is damaged, your view of the world changes, you might become a little somber, you might go through a grief and anger phase, and maybe you'll be a little bit more vigilant in the future, but you will heal. That wound, like a wound on the body, will heal. The wounds that are caused by narcissistic abuse, emotional abuse, particularly sexual abuse by a psychopathic parent in childhood, those wounds don't heal. There's a type of disease that I've had the misfortune of getting a couple of times from doing jiu-jitsu, where you rub your skin on the mats, and if the mats are dirty, your skin gets an infection called impetigo, and the wounds, what happens is the wounds open and they won't heal. The body just doesn't heal, and they stay open until you apply like a steroid cream. And this is a good metaphor for what happens. Your skin on your body obviously represents your boundary to reality. So if the skin is open, reality can get in, infection can get in. You must have skin, and you must have the ability to heal that skin. Narcissistic abuse, sexual abuse in childhood erodes the body's ability to do that. I'm using a metaphor here, so the body and the mind's ability to do that. Your ability to self-heal gets corrupted. The software for self-healing gets corrupted. There's a virus, a Trojan virus that gets put in there that means that you can't do it. On top of that, for some reason that I don't really fully understand why. I mean, I just hold my hands up to this stuff and go, I don't know why it happens. I'm just a mechanic. You know, I just fix this stuff. The wounds reappear. So even if you go to therapy and it's not the right kind of therapy, and that wound that you have there, that's that particular experience, that's how you heal it, it can just pop up again. Now, the effect of that to the victim is extremely disorientating, and it's despair-inducing, because they will be left sat there going, what the effing hell is wrong with me? Will I ever be okay? And then they start to self-blame. They start to self-loathe. There must be something wrong with me. There must be something wrong with me. Is the soundtrack that plays in their mind as they drink and self-medicate, take drugs, and have promiscuous sex and engage in all kinds of dangerous activities, because they stop caring about themselves. They've not kicked into full-blown, I'm ready to die, but they're also like, yeah, I'm not that fussed about living either. So there's kind of a vague suicidal ideation that colors the backdrop of that type of person's life. Everybody sat there will be going, yes, yes, that's good, you're describing me, fine, now what do we do? The most direct way that I'm aware of now for handling this is to understand that these emotional wounds cause a thing that is called emotional flashbacks. My understanding of it so far is that if we can name the demon, we can tame the demon. So if you have the words to describe what it is that is happening to you, you will start to recover. You've got emotional wounds from childhood. I think the best description of what happens is from Pete Walker's book, Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. You're now experiencing emotional flashbacks, which mean that you can be triggered by anything, everything, or nothing at all, or you might even trigger yourself. That's how ready we are to be triggered when we've been the victim of this kind of abuse. You might just have a memory of bicycling, and then you're thinking about being a kid, and then you're thinking about your parents, and boom, you're in a full-blown emotional flashback just because you saw somebody ride by you on a bike, and now you're sat in your car on your own crying, and you don't know why, thinking, I'm a crazy person, I'll never get better, lost the point. So his model for sort of describing how emotional flashbacks kick off, and what we can do to just break it down and go, okay, calm down, be mindful, get back in your body, stay calm. It is going to get better, but it is going to take work. There is work ahead of you. Just start. Okay, I got triggered. I am now in an emotional flashback. You will change, everybody watching this will change their lives if they can only say, this is not me, this is an emotional flashback. There's a poop storm of emotion and psychological trouble that is just kicking off inside of me, that's walking around inside the brain, firing off adrenaline and cortisol and making you feel extremely unpleasant feelings in your body. And that's an emotional flashback. If you can just say that an emotional flashback is an emotional flashback, you'll start to change your life very, very quickly. You'll start to get leverage on this demon, and you'll learn to tame it. But it does take time. So that seems to be the one and only thing that I'm aware of that can stop these wounds from just popping back up at random and opening up and not healing. This is the one thing I'm aware of that can actually, that has certainly allowed me and some of the clients that I've worked very close with over a period of time to actually see some real lasting healing. Anybody can feel good after a weekend seminar. Anybody can feel good after 10 weeks of 1 hour a week talk therapy. It's tough to hold those gains when faced with reality. Because for people with complex PTSD who suffer narcissistic abuse, normal day-to-day living is just a lot tougher. It's just difficult.
So what would you recommend as step 1, step 2, step 3, or I know that you teach on a regular basis self-protection. So you would say, okay, we're going to step 1, when you see the bicycle go by and you're triggered, then this is what you're going to do. Step 2, this is what you're going to do. Step 3, this is what you're going to do, or however many steps you would recommend.
In the same way that when I taught self-protection to help people protect themselves from potential muggers, rapists, murderers, whatever it is out there in the world, the first thing I would teach is that, you know, prevention is better than cure. It is easier to prevent an emotional flashback than to dig your way out of a full-blown one. You know, if you're in the middle of a full-blown emotional flashback, you need to have a very strong grounding in Zen meditation to pull your ass out of that in any reasonable time scale. However, if you've experienced a lot of emotional flashbacks in your life and it's strong for you and you get into a good deep hole and you can get yourself out of it inside of half an hour to 2 hours, you would be given a brown belt, which is one less than a black belt in the system I teach, to extend that metaphor way too far. It's pretty advanced to be able to do that. Prevention is better than cure. Learn yourself. Become a friend to yourself. Realize that your ability to love yourself, to show yourself respect, to acknowledge your own needs, to acknowledge your own feelings has been corrupted and corroded by, you know, people who are just evil. You know, you're not supposed to use the word evil in psychology. You're supposed to maintain a stance of moral relativism. This is another little tip, sideline. Moral relativism will screw you up. Moral relativism will make you sicker if you've been the victim of any kind of narcissistic abuse. So for the therapists and the coaches out there, you must have an ability to morally condemn the abuser and say that what they did was completely evil. None of this airy-fairy, oh, but also they are victims of abuse and they are victims of victims. Yes, that's probably true, but it's not helping the human being in front of you who's struggling. So they need absolute license to morally condemn the abuser. What the hell was I saying? I can't remember. It's a mess in here. You
were talking about our viewers right now receiving a brown belt because they're going to self-soothe within 30 minutes.
Oh, yes. Yes, sorry. Yeah, that's right. So if you do that and you're in the middle of a flashback and you can self-soothe and you can be a friend to yourself and you have that ability to have a strong moral framework. Morality is the core of this whole issue. It's a morality play. The narcissist, victim, predator-prey drama that we're living is a morality play, and in its efforts, it's so sick, but in its effort to be good, to be moral, psychotherapy has said, let's take morality off the table, let's take condemnation off the table, and they've really hurt the victims by doing that. It will leave you swimming in soup if you can't grasp. So you must have a strong philosophy. You must rebuild your whole philosophy of life. Why? Because the narcissistic abuser, whether you were a child, whether it's your parent, whether it's your ex-husband, girlfriend, whatever it was, their whole game was to corrode your morality, your moral structure. Their whole game was to corrode your ability to think critically, to love yourself, to account for your own needs and wants, to account for your feelings, and to realize when you needed things. So, you know, I would say to these warriors, these brave young warriors, we're going to send you into battle against demons with no armor, no shield, no sword, and no pants on. Good luck to you. It's very tough. It's very, very tough. But you get stronger by the battle. You acquire the armor, you acquire the shield, the weapons, and the skill and the strength and the ability by fighting. So for me, one of the things that I found useful when I was at the very bottom of a very deep hole following a severely narcissistically abusive relationship was just brutal stubbornness. I just had a brutal stubbornness that said, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to kill myself because you won't win. And I was like a pit bull. I was just clinging on. I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't understand it, but you won't win. You will not win. You know, my life will be an act of vengeance for the evil that was done to me. And it is. You know, this is my revenge. You know, watch what that person did to me, what those individual people did to me. They caused me to be here talking to you now. They caused me to be doing what I'm doing now. So I always think of the quote from Star Wars, which might be a bit, I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan or not, but Obi-Wan Kenobi said to Darth Vader, "Strike me down, Vader, and I shall become more powerful than you can ever imagine." That's it.
Oh yeah.
That's what's happening. So the more I'm attacked, the more I feel myself being targeted for narcissistic abuse. Yes, it's tough and it's shaky and it's turbulent, but every time I come out the other side, I'm always stronger. I'm always more determined, more ferocious. So there is a ferocity of intent that these people, the victims, need if they're going to have the ability to move forward. They need to say, okay, this absolutely will not kill me. This absolutely will not destroy me. I don't care if it takes me to the time I'm 70. I will undo what was done to me. And that was important as well in my recovery, was that I didn't give it a time frame. I was like, oh, I'm 35 and I live in a garage and I have no car and I'm a bum, which was true. You know, I was extremely depressed and could barely function. I did nightclub security to make just enough money to keep putting food in my mouth and to put my socks on in the morning. That was it. And I was, you know, self-judging, criticizing for that. When I took that, one of the things that helped me was to take the time frame off it and say, well, so what? You know, there are people I know who lived to the age of 85 who never resolved issues from childhood. Their entire life was wasted. So I kind of started to think, okay, well, what's the proper philosophical approach to this? The proper philosophical approach is to say, I didn't have choice before this age. You took choice away from me. When you infringed on my boundaries psychologically and physically, because you were stronger than me, because you were more powerful than I was, you took away choice, you took away consent. So all that stuff is not my fault. That was done to me. So I kind of said, this is 2 years ago, I'm 37 now, at age 35, I said, okay, up until age 35, demons, you got that, you won. You can have all that. That was you. Well done. But from now, this is me. Nobody's taken this from me. This is the rest of my life. So it's important to, it's going to be very tough for people, but they need to find that toughness inside of them, that grit to say, you know, F you, I'm not going down, I'm going to keep going, and I'll do whatever it takes to get better, as long as it takes, or I will die trying. That needs to be the attitude. And when I adopted that attitude, I think I started to get better pretty much straight away. There was like a period of 3 months where my recovery just spiked. And then slowly over and that's where the Spartan Life Coach came in. I was like, okay, I need to start helping other people with this. And the more I helped other people, the more it kind of developed and gathered momentum. And then, you know, 18 months later, or 2 years later now, 30,000 subscribers on YouTube, and people really, really like it. And I'm given the privilege and the honor of being able to help people who suffered as I suffered, and to give them back independence and freedom.
I love everything that you were just referring to, and the ferocity, the ferocious inside of you that needed to come out in order for you to survive and to live your life with such purpose. I'd like for you to comment on the importance of calling abuse abuse.
Well,
you mentioned this in one of your other videos, and it was a key for me that unlocked that spike in my recovery that you mentioned. So I'd like you to comment on that.
I think I'll be a bit facetious and philosophical. I'll answer the question sort of in the inverse. If we are not allowed to call abuse abuse, if within the therapy room or amongst friends or with family members or in coaching, there's an implicit doctrine that says, you know, Athena, you can't judge these people. You can't call abuse abuse. You can't say that what they did is wrong. What does that do to you? Unintentionally or not, you know, I might be a good, decent human being, a nice psychotherapist who really wants to help you, and I was just trained to do that. What I'm saying to you without saying it is, Athena, the rules don't apply to them. The rules that apply to you, they don't apply to them. There's a different set of rules. You're not allowed to cut somebody off in traffic. You have to pay your parking fines. But if somebody rapes you or hurts you, come on now, you should really just be the bigger person and let them off. that's crazy making communication. You can't ask a human being to tolerate that. But I was, and you were, and many people were as well. And as a consequence, I walked around full of rage, just furious. I'm lucky I'm not in prison now. I'm really lucky because I had some, I won't go into it in too much depth, but when I was in my late 20s, there were some scenarios where I had some very close scrapes because I was just a time bomb walking around waiting to go off, full of rage and trained, you know, in martial arts to be able to fight. So it was dangerous. And, things happen in that kind of a context. It's dangerous. It's not a healthy place to be. So to answer the question in the inverse, the consequence of not being able to cause abuse is you put the blame back onto the victim, and in their frustration, depending on their trauma response style. I have a trauma response style of fawn and fight, if you're into trauma response styles. Yeah. It's fight, fawn, flight,
freeze,
and freeze. Sorry, I just got a lesson from somebody last night in physiology, and they were saying your brain controls, feeding, fleeing, fighting, and the other F word. And I'm like, don't say that. Don't, the more I'm telling myself not to say it. So it can be extremely debilitating, extremely dangerous. And in my frustration, I just got really, really, really deeply angry with myself, with my abusers, and with the world. And I ended up feeling heartbroken with humanity, heartbroken with reality. I was like, this is just nonsense. Well, what is the point? So that's the inverse answer to the question. To answer the question as it presents, what is the benefit of calling abuse abuse? Is it allows us to accept reality.
The importance. I feel like it is of utmost importance, like you mentioned in one of your other videos, that in order for us to heal, in order for us to live, absolutely 100% unequivocally must, capital letters everywhere, call abuse abuse, period.
Yes.
Not, well, they didn't mean it, well, their intent wasn't there, well, maybe, all of this ambiguous nonsense. And like you were talking about moral relativism, well, they were abused also, well, let's take into consideration blah, 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 blah. None of that. Calling abuse abuse, the importance of it.
It would only be of merit to a group of codependents like ourselves who can sit around nodding, going, oh, calling abuse abuse, that's the smart thing to do, that's right. To a cluster B personality, that is meaningless. They'd be like, of course you would tell, what are you talking about? We're so gaslit from early age that even to call a spade and call reality reality is some huge, oh, what a naughty taboo thing to do, how brave we are. The car is a car, the sky is blue, water is wet. Aren't we rebels? It's, of course abuse is abuse, duh.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Oh, that was fantastic. You touched on something in the narrative of the response to the question that we just asked. You touched on the word rage. Now, the reason why I want to focus in just a little bit on this is because, again, we're taught, ooh, anger is naughty, and we were abused by angry people. And so anger and rage and all of that, well, rage and anger differ, but it feels like a naughty thing. It feels bad. It's terrifying to get angry because bad things happen when people get angry. The moment that there's a raised voice or whatever, there's so many people with PTSD that anytime they hear a raised voice. So I would love for you to take a few moments to speak to specifically the men in my community right now who may have a fawn and fight combo, or that really are experiencing rage, and maybe perhaps talk about the difference between healthy anger and inappropriate rage, or the fact that maybe sometimes rage, like, can it be used for good? Just speak to the topic of anger and rage and how it can be used positively in our recovery journey, specifically to the men out there in our audience right now, because I know a few that are really struggling with this.
So I started laughing before because you said naughty, and I thought it was funny the way. So people watch this and be like, why is he laughing? This is serious. I laughed at the word naughty because I'm childish. So speaking to the men,
I'll speak to the men.
No, our channel, it's okay for you to go as geek speak as you want and laugh as much as you want, because we've warned people that this is our channel and they can turn it off if they don't like our personality. So you just go for it. Go for it.
It's YouTube. Attendance is totally voluntary, darlings. Totally voluntary. So, I mean, the Spartan Life Coach really evolved because I was talking to angry men. And I was talking to angry men who were just like me. The business worked because I understood the core values and the needs of my market, because my avatar for a person to sell to was me. So I was like, it was really easy, and it was a lot of fun to do, because I had a community of guys just like me, codependent men who were angry, who were not in a good, healthy touch with their masculinity and didn't have even a good sense of what being a man was. Without wanting to go off on that one, you know, our sense of what being a man is nowadays is deeply, deeply damaged. It's deeply corroded, and men receive ridiculously confusing messages about what they can and can't do. And unfortunately, that creates some very neurotic responses and some very neurotic, unhealthy overcompensation. To wit, the fight-fawn response in men. If you're like me and you're angry and you have a fight-fawn response, I've got to warn guys that means we have a predisposition to narcissistic sort of patterns of behavior. It doesn't mean you have a predisposition to narcissistic personality disorder, but the fight-fawn response. I only found this out recently through reading Pete Walker's book. Just a little heads up, it's associated with psychopathy. You might be not an out-and-out lunatic psychopath. I think there's factor 1 and factor 2. I can't remember which is which. I think factor 2 is the more friendly psychopath. You'll be the more friendly psychopath, but you're still effectively a psychopath, which means you have impulse control issues, you're self-destructive, you have a warped sense of what women are and an ability to relate to women. Your ability to relate to women is warped. You know, I've struggled with that a lot over the years because of the conflicting messages that were pushed upon me in childhood. So it's difficult. It's a very, very tricky one. So speaking to men particularly, there's a lot of work to be done here. There's a lot of things that need to be discussed. There's a lot of things that need to be looked at. There's a lot of double binds that men are put into that furthers that rage and that aggression. To the point of anger and healthy anger versus rage, to all humans listening, regardless of gender or predisposition, I would say that anger is your friend. It's aggression is your friend. Healthy anger, healthy aggression is your friend. If you seek to crush or suppress anger and aggression, whether you are a lady or a man, two things are going to happen. One is you're going to get depressed, and two is your sex drive will disappear. We have become frightened of anger. We have become frightened of aggression. And whenever I think of this, and I think historically, I always start to think of the Victorian times, and just before that as well, where people started to wear really tight clothes. And they started to wear clothes that pushed their bodies in. And they became very, very, in the West, I mean, very, very obsessed with stiffness and rigidity. And we, in the West, we got far by doing that. We got a long way by following that protocol of stiffness, rigidity, and suppression. The clothing was that way. The manner was that way. People were taught to, if they were of nobility and high birth and an educated and wealthy gentleman or lady, they'd be taught to be very, very restrained. And we got far from doing that, but it is not healthy. That is not what we are as a human animal. It's not appropriate. So we must get in contact with that anger. As far as abuse from as far as recovery from narcissistic abuse goes, if you are not yet in the angry phase, you're still you still got a lot of work to do. If you're numbed out and kind of a bit vague and philosophical about your abuse, and every time somebody asks you, so how do you feel about the fact that your father did this to you, you reply with, well, I think. And then the coach says, no, 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 I asked you what you feel. And they reply with, well, I think. So they keep, what they're doing is they're dissociating. They're going out of their heart into their head, because the heart has all the pain in it. The body has all the pain in it. So they want to be out of body experiences all day long, please. Yes, thank you, I'm checking out right now. The eyes just fade out. Okay, fine. It's a survival mechanism But if you get skilled at that, you know, whatever you do a lot of, you get good at, whether it's table tennis or badminton or martial arts or dissociation. The more you do it, the better you get. So you get a lot of people who won't touch their anger, so they dissociate. When they do that for long enough, but they still seek to have control in the world, they become psychopaths. The psychopath is somebody who is in a deep state of neurotic rage that is in total denial about it. Narcissists as well obviously overlap. Everybody here knows that. Narcissists and psychopaths overlap. They're in a deep state of rage, total denial. I am not angry at all. I'm sure if you said to Hitler, you're an angry man, you're like, no, I'm not angry. But, you know, he's obviously just fueled by deep neurotic rage. When I say neurotic rage, what I mean is it's not in response to anything. You're just angry now. You're not angry because this person infringed your boundaries. You're not angry because this thing happened. You are just full of rage. And when it comes to being an adrenophile who's addicted to the adrenaline of anger and rage and righteous indignation and conflict, Hitler is a good archetype to use. There's a guy who in World War I basically had a nervous breakdown. He fought in the trenches as just a normal low-level infantryman, and he got what they called at the time hysterical blindness. Hysterical blindness meant he believed he couldn't see, but there was nothing wrong with his eyes. He could see, but he just was blocking reality out. He had seen too much. He was in, they called it shell shock. We would now call it PTSD. And he was like, no, I can't see, I can't see, I can't see. When his sight returned to him, he returned to a country that was completely humiliated by the West, and he developed a hatred of Britain and France and the rest of Europe, and then he just rode a wave of something that was already happening so he could go and take vengeance on those people who had hurt him, driven by absolute fury and neurosis, and he tapped in. It was almost like the collective humiliation of an entire nation had gone into him, because he was a broken man. He was a perfect vessel because he was insane. And all of that hatred and anger and resentment went into him and expressed it. So that's neurotic rage. Righteous anger is speaking up when you've been hurt. That's a good mammalian response. If I poke a wolf with a stick, I expect Mr. Wolf to bite me eventually because he is an effing wolf. It wouldn't be an appropriate response to be poked with a stick over and over again and just sit there like Gandhi with a smile on your face going, go on, do it again. That's not what a normal human being should do. You should have a mammalian response to defend and to counterattack. So I probably ranted enough about anger.
No, not at all. I enjoyed the response a lot, actually. And I think it illustrates and differentiates between anger and rage and the after effects and so forth. So if you could speak to what you just mentioned, like to the men out there, right? Now, if you could speak to everyone, let's say there are men out there or there are women out there that are watching our channel, which we know there are, men and women alike, that really, really, really struggle with rage or I'm not angry, or their instant response is to go into compassion mode and trying to, like you said, they disassociate, or, well, I think this, or maybe I feel this, and they're really just sort of unsure. What if they're leaning towards that, the psychopathy, or what if they are what you just described? Are there some steps they can take, a direction they can go confidently, and knowing that they're going the opposite of the way that they have been going, that they just need to do this 180 and go, okay, I have been experiencing those things. I do exhibit those traits that he just described. I don't want that because I'm an empath and I'm watching this channel and I don't want to become my abuser, which we think that we're going to, even though it's completely impossible. What I'm going to do now is 180 and go, no, these are the steps I'm going to take. This is what I'm determined to do. Do you have a suggestion?
I have a suggestion. It might not be to everybody's palate. It's the old school counseling, psychotherapy trope or sort of stereotype. Tell me how that makes you feel. How does that make you feel? So everybody who's experiencing that, they need to have a little therapist inside of their head who's going, how does that make you feel? Because they are disassociated, they are in denial, they are running from rage. But rage is a feeling, so they're running from all feelings. This is where people accidentally, through their complex PTSD response, end up being diagnosed accidentally as borderlines because it looks like borderline, but it is not borderline. And one of the things that we do, which looks like borderline, is this denial of feelings. I will not open that door that is full of screaming demons and ghosts because I'm scared that if I open that door, it will crush me. I lived like that for years. The compassion response is frequently just nonsense, and so many, you know what spiritual bypassing is. There's a ton of people out there, especially they flock online, and they want to project an image of themselves as being above normal human emotion and above normal conflict. But lift the veil, and the person's a mess. They're an absolute friggin' mess, because if you live as though you're an observer of your own life, it's going to be a mess. If you live as though you're an observer of your own life, that's kind of a narcissistic stance. I'm not saying that person has a narcissistic personality disorder, but to live outside yourself, looking at yourself as though you're watching a movie, that's a narcissistic stance to adopt. Don't watch yourself. Be in yourself. Be you, and feel what it is to feel. Feel your feelings. If you don't feel your feelings, you can't process them. If you don't process them, you can't recover. There's no recovery without vulnerability. There's no healing without processing those emotions. Yes, some of them are sticky. Yes, some of those, boils when they're broken. The pus that comes out stinks. Yes, fine. You will cry. There will be scars. There will be tears. There'll be snot. It will be undignified, but it doesn't last as long as you think it does. And once it's done, once that boil is lanced, you don't have to go there ever again. A lot of people who are watching this who are struggling, they don't realize how much of a burden they're already carrying. Their life is a burden. It's just burdensome. And they think, well, everybody has their cross to bear. No, not like this. Not like this. This is most people around don't know what you're experiencing because they didn't come from that kind of a background. They didn't have the experiences that you had as a kid. So people who self-identify as empaths, what we tend to do is we say, well, I understand how other people experience life because I'm just like them. I'm just like them. They're just like me. Dudettes. That's what got you in trouble in the first place. Thinking that your narcissistic abuser was just like you. They flippin' well ain't just like you. Not at all. So that's a big one to get over. So my primary advice would be get into how do I feel? What are my emotions right now?
Wonderful. I want to comment on the Oprah reality tunnel that you just mentioned. That whole you're sort of like watching your life as though it were a movie, and well, how do normal people respond to things like that? Well, this is how I think I should respond. It's very Stepford. It's very mechanical. So I have in just a couple of words, because I want to save the last 15 minutes of your time with us for you to talk about your recovery from narcissistic abuse first aid, for how to take revenge on a narcissist book. I want you to be able to tell us all about the projects that you have been collaborating on and that you have launched that are helping lots of abuse survivors out there. But in just a couple of words, I would love for you to comment on the people who give us, the survivors, the advice of, well, what's in the past is in the past. You're never going to get past it if you don't you got to just draw a line in the sand. You got to step over that line, and you just need to leave it behind you forever, and you just need to forget all about it. Now, what's in the past is in the past, and you need to press onward towards the future. Otherwise, you're just going to stay stuck there. So you better just step over the line in the sand and just, come on already. That was 20, 30, 40 years ago. Can you comment on that?
And you need to forgive. If you don't forgive, then there's something wrong with you.
Yes. Could you comment on that, please?
Forgive. Yeah. The Oprah reality tunnel. I should really say, like, the whole thing with Oprah Winfrey, she does drive me crazy. I have to give her credit. She's encouraged people to read some good books, for sure.
Yes.
But the Oprah reality tunnel became a good shorthand way for what I saw as being just massive group disassociation, huge amounts of spiritual bypassing, and again, this idea of forgiveness being forced on you. I'm not even sure where it comes from. I don't know whether it's like partly religious doctrine that's crossed over in psychotherapy or what it is. The idea that you should forgive somebody who has abused you, maybe even as they are abusing you, be the bigger person. Why is the onus and the responsibility for the moral workload put back on me? Why is it not on them where it belongs? It's a really weird tendency. You see it time and again, and it's yet another way of double binding the victim back into the thought of there's something wrong with you. It's all your fault.
Yeah.
I can't remember your original question. I'm sorry.
Oh no, the original question was just to comment in just a few words on this thing that is being pressed upon us as the survivor of, whether it's a survivor of a cluster B parent, or a survivor of a narcissistic spouse, or even for people like myself, which I can only speak for myself, but every single friend that I even made that I considered to be a, air quotes, close friend at the time, even just until I realized what it was that I went through, was I attracted people that were exactly like my main abuser.
Yes.
And so the original question was that I wanted you to comment on the system, or whether it is a faith-based organization or counselor or psychologist or board certified, et cetera, yada yada yada. You need to just draw a line in the sand, step over it, and forget what lies behind and press on towards the future, because if you go back and try to feel your feels, that's nonsense, which I don't believe that is the case at all. I obviously am asking a loaded question that I'm expecting a response to, but I know that you've spoken on your channel about people that tell us that you need to just draw a line in the sand and move on, because that was 30, 40 years ago. Why aren't you over it by now? Why aren't you just over this by now? Was the original, would you comment on that?
Okay, so I think there's a lot to comment on there. The simplest way of describing it would be to say a healthy human being has a healthy, functional relationship with reality. An unhealthy human being has a dysfunctional relationship with reality. So if you're saying to a client they just need to move on, you're not helping them to deal with the reality of what happened. It becomes a way of bypassing it and of avoiding it. There has to be a way of looking at that reality, guiding the client back to the reality and saying to them, okay, what was it that happened? Did this happen? Yes, this did happen. Was it okay? No, it's not okay to do that. And just that can be very, very cathartic, which I think is why, I found the scene in the film Good Will Hunting where Robin Williams playing the therapist says to young Will Hunting, it's not your fault. That's an engagement with a core reality that the character of Will Hunting is in denial of, because the child in him goes, it must be my fault. It must be my fault. This is why when it happens in childhood, it's so corrosive and so damaging. Our model for loving ourselves comes directly from our parents. So if your parents love you, you at the internal level go, okay, that's how I love me. This is how to love me. If they don't love you, by default, you hate yourself. I think I'm fairly safe saying that. It's not that you default back to, oh, I'm not important, or I'm a bit neutral. No, I hate myself. I hate myself because I'm not lovable. So I must be, if I'm not lovable, children thinking in black and white, if I'm not lovable, I must be detestable. There must be something intrinsically wrong with me. I must be loathable. And then we start to develop avoidant personality disorder. Then we start to develop schizoid personality disorder. Then we don't relate to people so well, or we avoid them altogether, and the cycle perpetuates itself. You then prove to yourself that you're not lovable. You prove to yourself that you're not worth knowing, or that you're annoying, or you're a burden, by either being annoying or being a burden at an unconscious level, but developing some very strange tics in personal interactions that put people off you and confirm a pre-held belief from childhood, or just avoiding them altogether and going, this is too complicated. Screw you guys, I'm going home. I don't know what human interaction is. I'm not going to do it anymore. So my answer to it would be, in the reality that I propose, in the version that I propose, the client accepts reality, moves towards reality. Let's help the client go, yes, this did happen. Yes, it is wrong, because the client will automatically, their slave training kicks in, the brainwashing kicks in, and they go, it wasn't that bad. He only raped me once. He didn't cut my hand off. You know, it could have been worse. And everybody with CPTSD says that. It could have been worse. At least they put a roof over my head. At least they fed us. It's like, that's not how children are supposed to be raised. It's not, you know, some sort of like gulag, communist gulag that you send people to, where they'll give you a bowl of rice every day and they'll only give you a good kicking on Fridays, and you go, well, you know, at least they're fair. That's not raising a child. Children need love. If you can't love a child, don't have a child. Don't do it. You know, in some ways it's a very complicated job, parenting, but then in other ways it's very simple. Just be around the child and show them some love and attention, and they will grow up healthy. Don't F them up, and they'll probably be all right.
Yes, and the greatest revenge ever for those of us who were raised by the gulag is that we are fully, I want to say fully functioning, but I say it with a question mark at the end. And here I am, and we are on YouTube, and this is what we're doing. You made reference to the gulag, so of course I wanted you to share for those of our audience who have not seen your video where you describe the two different gulags and how absolutely dangerous and damaging, how much more damaging it is for the gulag that they're in, where they actually love them, versus the one where they just get beaten. Would you paraphrase that video in brief for our audience? I think that they would really benefit from this greatly, greatly, greatly in a huge way.
Okay, I'll give a bit of history to that. I set up as a former self-protection instructor to do life coaching, self-assertiveness training, because that's what I was qualified to do. I didn't expect to be doing this kind of deep psychological work with people. And as one of my first clients, we developed the concept of the gulag together. She lived in a country that was formerly under Soviet rule, where they still are taught Russian in schools, though they have their own ethnic dialect as well. And she says, you know, the Russian influence is still very, very much here. So we discussed it, and we were talking, and you know, I was supposed to be doing life coaching with her, and ended up doing some very, very deep work. It was totally honest. I said to her, I don't know what we're doing here. Are you happy to go through with this? And she was like, yeah, fine. We figured it out between us. And it was this, what became clear was that this lady was not given any space or any boundaries as a child at all, ever. She wasn't even, this is so evil and so cunning and torturous, she wasn't even allowed to dissociate. She wasn't even allowed to retreat back into herself. She wasn't even allowed to go to her room. If she went silent, she would be tortured for that. So it was like some 1984 political prisoner stuff. So that's where I started looking at the treatment of political prisoners. I'd already looked at cults and trauma bonding before, so I started to look at, well, what do I know about cults? What do I know about trauma bonding? What do I know about the way in which political prisoners can be psychologically tortured and broken, and how they do it and why they do it? So we adopted that, and it worked. It worked brilliantly. When we assumed that she had been a political prisoner in a gulag, it was like, wow, major step forwards in the coaching process. And what we said is there are two gulags. The idea I gave her, I said to her at the beginning of a coaching session, I'd written this before the session. I said, here's the metaphor. There are two gulags. I run a gulag, you run a gulag. We get our filthy anti-communist dissidents, they come in. I beat my anti-communist dissidents with a rubber hose and give them a cold shower and say, you filth, you hate Comrade Stalin, you deserve this pain, I hate you, I hate you. And I do that every day at 4 o'clock. And then I send them to the labor camps to work until they're dead. She does the same thing in her gulag. Every day at 4 o'clock, she beats them with a rubber hose, she hoses them down, she says, you hate Comrade Stalin, you filthy anti-communist, you deserve this pain, blah, 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 blah. But then says to them, actually, no, I'm just teaching you. I do this out of love. I do this out of care. I want to bring you back to communism, brothers and sisters. Please, you've got confused. That Western corrupt decadence, it got into your mind. It's pollution. The pain that I give you is the fire that burns away the filth. I'm paraphrasing things that have actually been said during torture sessions. Our Western term, brainwashing, comes from a Chinese term, they think, which was heart washing. Heart washing, the washing of the heart, is what the Chinese communists would do with dissidents. And it was brutal. They would literally go inside and they would say that inside of your brain, comrade, corruption exists. Do you want it out? And they'd say, yes, I want it out. And by saying, yes, I want it out, they would consent to their own torture. They'd consent to their own punishment. They would be told to consent to their own punishment. The manifestation of this, I'm not anti-communist, pro-communist. Politics is beyond me. So before anybody comments angrily about that, well, politics I don't do. The psychology I do. Politics I don't understand. I had a client who had been raised by North Korean parents in Canada, and when she had done something wrong, or her sisters had done something wrong, the father would make them go and get a stick, prepare the stick from the garden, write down their crimes, recite them to him in the living room while the family watched before beating them. And I was like, yes, there's some Korean imprint that's been left from that communist regime. So you're made to stand there and say, this is the crime I committed against the state. I didn't wash the dishes when Dad told me. I didn't take the trash out. I spoke back at dinner. And here is the stick with which I wish to be beaten. Please help me get the corruption out of me. That's the two gulag sort of metaphor that I've been playing with that works for some people. You torture the person, but you don't give them the dignity and respect of saying, I hate you. I'm torturing you because I hate you and you're scum and it's about you versus me and hate. What you do is you're insidious. You say, I'm not torturing you, brother. I'm helping you. I'm not torturing you, my sister. I'm trying to bring you back to the purity of communism. You need this help. This isn't torture. Who says torture? This is teaching. You know, and in Stalinist Russia, there were cases of that where you could be tortured, but you were banned from saying the word torture. You're banned from saying you're banned. Like if you were, you know, so it's another level. It's totalitarianist thinking, which is what you get in narcissistic family units. They operate like a cult. They operate like a totalitarian state. It's absolute submission or death. It's absolute total subservience or hideous, disproportionate punishment in response.
So the level of abuse that is received by the people in this gulag has a pretty coding on it that it's what you said, like it's not torture. You're not allowed to say torture. It's not torture. I'm helping you. Or to put it in the terms of all of our viewers, it's not abuse. I love you. It's not abuse.
Right. So many of our survivors are told, I'm doing this because I love you. You know, this is my, you know, like my abuser told me when I was a child, when he was abusing me, I'm doing this because I love you. This is what loving fathers do. And you're right. It messes with your mind.
Yeah, it would have been kinder to say, I'm doing this because I hate you. Because then you can form, your boundaries are intact. You can say, okay, I am a hated object. You are the person who hates. I am that which is hated. We have a confrontational relationship there. But when it's, I love you, and the thing that is difficult for survivors to sort of pick apart then is, well, which was my feeling and which was their feeling? Which was my injunction and which was their injunction? And then you start, well, did I consent? Did I go along with that? Did I cause it? Did I create that? You know, and all of this nonsense, because you were a child. You can't consent when you're a child. There's no such, it doesn't exist. There can only be coercion.
Right, but we blame ourselves. We do. We feel complicit. Complicit in our own abuse, and it is part of that big piece about us growing up hating ourselves. Yeah. Because we think we somehow caused it or agreed to it.
I think it's an unfortunate, like, call it a software fault or a cognitive bias, if you will, where a child's mind will default back to it's me. So if there is love, it's me. I'm the love. I'm the yay me. If there is hate, it's me. So there's a narcissistic phase that every child goes through, where they're the center of the universe. This is what Freud referred to as, well, he didn't call it healthy narcissism technically. Other people called it healthy narcissism. But he was like, it's a phase of narcissism that you grow out of, where you're the center of the universe, meaning when you go asleep, the sun disappears and the world stops. When you wake up, ta-da, the world begins again. So everything is you. And there are no boundaries at that age. Mummy is me, daddy is me. We're all the same. So you can't say no. You can't consent or not consent because there is no me and you. There's only this. And it's all me. So if I witness a murder at age 3 in my living room, it was me. Because I'm there. And there's no boundary. There isn't the other. There's just this. Everything is me.
Yeah.
That's powerful. I know that we ran you up right at time, and I wanted you to have some time, take as many minutes as you would like to share with our audience that's viewing right now and those who will be viewing the replay. If you would share about your first aid for survivors, for your book that just released, that's available on Amazon, and it has quite the controversial title, which I love. How to Take Revenge on a Narcissist, which is, I like the example that you gave in your video of, it's not like you could ever really like find a way to have revenge, like you're like, I'm a vengeful person. It's more like you get a view of their instrument panel on which they see everything, in which they choose of which button to push, and you go, oh my gosh, that's the button. I will never respond the same again because now I know what the instrument panel looks like from their point of view. So I just want to turn it back over to you, Richard, and just allow you to sort of shamelessly self-promote and just tell people how they can reach you on social media, where they can find you, what if they want to work with you personally as a coach, what if they want self-protection skills, what if they're in Liverpool, what if, talk about yourself for just the last few minutes that we have you here, would you?
If they're in Liverpool, they should send me biscuits, preferably that have chocolate on them, at all costs immediately. I think, all this stuff is there on SpartanLifeCoach.com. What I would recommend for people is to go to the Spartan Life Coach YouTube and sort of, in cyberspace terms, kind of hang out with me there, listen to me talk. If you can stand me talking for more than half an hour, then it's probably good for you, and you can check out the products if you like that style. If you don't, then don't. So all of that is free. Obviously, just go to Spartan Life Coach YouTube and see if you like that stuff. And if you do, all the descriptions for the products are there. I don't like to push promote anything. The one thing I would say about How to Take Revenge on a Narcissist is, yes, that was a provocation of a title. The actual construction of the book, as you say, you got it. Which is that it's to give you the insight into the control panel that narcissists operate from. And the way the book is structured, if you read it from beginning to end, which is what you're supposed to do, then by the end of the book, what you will actually have is a very deep insight into how alien and how foreign the narcissistic mindset is to yours, and then let it go and move on. There is, like, what's the ultimate revenge you could take? You could hire somebody to shoot them, but they still win. Because even in their dying breath, they'll be like, see, I'm the victim. They still win, even if you do that. Everything that you do just gets, it's like flypaper, it just sticks. So it's very, very difficult. What we can do, and it was an idea that I got, I was writing on Facebook, updates on my Spartan Life Coach Facebook, and I was like, I need to give people updates that they can ingest quickly, because it's Facebook, so it can't be an essay, that will help them to understand the reality of what is going on in their abusive relationship in a way that sticks with them and they can use. So I started talking about Planet Narcissism, and I started writing Facebook status updates as though I was a narcissist from Planet Narco. And it was like, to try and describe how alien that landscape is. You don't understand how narcissist thinks. You don't. You've got to train yourself. You've got to put your special narcissism specs on, and then you need to go to Planet Narcissist and then look around and be freaked out by how weird they are. With the stuff they're obsessed with is strange, it's childish, it's brittle, nothing makes sense. It's almost like when Frodo puts on the ring in Lord of the Rings, and then he goes into this alternate reality where everything looks different, but he's invisible and he can do creepy stuff. That's what it's like visiting Planet Narco. So the whole book was really to sort of say to people, look, you're in pain, you're confused, let the fuel of your anger, your desire for vengeance, which is a natural primal response, a worthy response, fuel you going through this book and really get into depths with what they do, but not from the me versus you, you're the predator and I'm the prey perspective. Let's flip the switch, which is a trick I learned from self-protection. Now I'm the predator, you're the prey. How would it be if I did some narcissistic tactics on you? You fantasize about that for an hour, however long it takes you to read the book. You get that out of your system, and then you go, pointless. They're children. They're children stuck in adults' bodies, which they are. They are stuck in their emotional growth, probably at about age 5, and that's it for them. That's life done. No therapy can help them. Nobody can break through to them because their denial is so tough. It's so strong. Nobody will get through. And, you know, that's it. That was the point of that book.
One of the most powerful comments or things that you said in, I watched the video that was talking about the release of the book, and it was that we are so used, especially if, as many of our subscribers are children of narcissistic parents, you look up to them as though they are this impenetrable force. It is so big. They are so big, and nothing you do will ever be good enough or smart enough. You can never outsmart them. It is just as though they are inside your head, and it is like, ah. But you mentioned in the book that what happens is you actually get to see them for the sad, lost, confused, weak, and sadly pathetic excuse for a human being they really are. I mean, you get to see that.
If you break through to the other side, you will see that they are cheap con artists, and all the con artistry that you thought was so subtle and smart and all the rest of it is because you consented. You consented to the magic show. It was a bad magic show delivered by a drunk, depressed guy in a clown outfit who wasn't even trying very hard, and it sucked. But you wanted it to work so well, so much that it did. You filled in the gaps. And this is why it's important for people to understand that the narcissistically abusive relationship, unless it's between a parent and a child, or a family member and a child, or a political prisoner and the person operating the gulag, it relies on desperation. Desperation has to be a key factor in the development of the narcissistically abusive relationship. You have to be desperate for it to work. So they need to hold the key to a door that you're desperate to unlock. That might just be love, or it might be something more than that. It might, you know, and that's what people need to look at. When you actually wake up from this and you have a sense of humor and you get objective, you go, yeah, what they did, it wasn't that smart. It wasn't that clever. They're not all powerful. It's actually just cheap tricks and, you know, smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, what the description that you gave was, it is a magic show put on by someone who was drunk wearing a clown outfit, and it really was just very pathetic. So
that's it.
Anyway, I really appreciate you, your time, your attention, your willingness to be our special guest for this virtual summit. And I would love for anybody who would like to reach out and connect with Richard, please go to Spartan Life Coach YouTube channel or find him on Facebook, the Richard Grannon Spartan Life Coach, and definitely reach out and just connect with his audience. His audience is an amazing group of individuals that are insightful and witty and kind, and I'm grateful that we got a chance to speak with you and have you speak to our audience, and I just appreciate your time, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Wonderful. Well, I don't know how the software is going to handle it if I try to do anything. So
I'll just wave and leave. I'll just wave, smile, and leave.
Aloha. Aloha from Hawaii, Richard.